Hello, my name is Rocco Pinella. I am going to be demonstrating here how to do the first day of Advent of Code. And I'm going to assume that you haven't really done a whole lot of coding before. So even before I go to the website for Advent of Code, I am just going to do a quick review on getting Python set up on your machine. So I'm doing this on a personal machine. If you're at work, this is a pretty similar process as well. Actually, identical. This would be fine for most use cases. So you can see here, I'm at python.org, python.org. And here, I could just very quickly click download Python for Windows. You don't need admin privs for this. So if I show the installer here, I'm actually not going to run this because I already have it on my machine. But you can follow the default settings. Only install for the current user. Don't install for all users. That requires admin privileges. So I'm going to exit this. When that's done, you could quickly confirm that Python installed correctly. I'm going to go to my start panel. I'm going to type CMD, Charlie Mega Delta. I'm going to open a command prompt, and I'm going to type Python space hyphen capital V, and you can see it prints Python. So I know that it's working there. So I have Python, but how do you actually edit code? If you do not know anything about text editors or if you haven't done a lot of Python before, I'm going to highly recommend you use something called Jupyter Lab. And this is what I'm going to demonstrate here. It's this really cool interactive interface. We need to install it quickly. And we actually install it with Python. We are going to use a command called pip. That stands for Python. Is it Python index packaging? Something along those lines. But I'm here at the documentation for Jupyter Lab. And my command is pip install Jupyter Lab. I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to paste it in here. And this will take a second. Depending on your internet speeds, if you're on any VPN or that sort of thing, this might take a minute or two to get going. So while that's running, I expect that to take a minute or two. I'm actually going to log into Advent of Code here. Day one has started, and I've already created a user account I'm logged in under. So I haven't seen this problem before. So forgive me if I'm a little slow in getting it solved. So there's a little story that goes along with it. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to try to get the cliff notes here. So there's usually a cute little story about elves or something. So let's see. Elves are loading you into a trebuchet. Final adjustments. I discovered that the calibration document, your puzzle input. So every day for this Advent of Code, the way that this goes is they're going to give you a puzzle input, which is usually a bunch of text. And you can see here, they give you some test examples also. They'll give you a test, and they will give you an answer for that test. The way that I usually work on these problems is that I write code that can solve the example that they give. And then we all have customized puzzle inputs. So this is going to open in another tab. This is just a text file. You can see that the real data is actually much longer. So I need to write some code every day. The way that this goes, I need to write some code that can solve this test case and give me the correct example answer. And then I run that code on this big full puzzle input. And then I input that into the answer bar, and I'll get a prompt if it was right or wrong. there's no uploading code here or anything. You are just running some code and attempting to get the right answer for the problem. So let's see here. I try to kind of understand what's going on here. So making final adjustments. The calibration document has been amended. They're having trouble reading the values in the document. The calibration document consists of lines of text. Each line originally contained a calibration value that they need to recover. On each line, the calibration value can be found by combining the first digit and the last digit to form a single 2-digit number. Okay, so there are only, these are combinations of numbers and strings. So in this example, the calibration for these 4 lines are 1, 2, 3, 8, 15, and 77. So, okay, so 12, I see a 1 and a 2 here. 38, I see a 3 and an 8 in here. 1, 5 for the third line. There's a 1, and all the way at the end, there's a 5. Okay, so this is making a lot of sense. This is kind of a good starter problem. I already see what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to need to write some code that goes through this line by line, pulls out the first number and the second number, puts them together, and then all of those numbers, we add them up. So this is pretty reasonable. Okay, my project finished installing. Now for the maybe what some might consider the tricky part here. I'm going to actually get this started. So I'm gonna make a folder on my machine where I plan to put all of the puzzles. So I'm just gonna make a folder in this directory that I have here. New folder. I'm gonna call this Advent of Code 2023. And this folder is where I'm going to get started. So I want to open Jupyter Lab, and I want to be looking at this folder. So I'm going to do a neat little trick here. I'm going to click in the address bar in my Windows Explorer. And here I'm going to type Charlie Mega Delta command. That'll open a command window right in this window. And now, since I installed Jupyter Lab, I'm just going to type Jupyter space lab. And this will take a moment to get started. It's not super duper fast. But this is pretty cool now. I get this whole neat environment that I can work in. So I want to make something called a notebook. I'm going to click this notebook. And here I can just start writing Python code. So I can do something like 2 + 2. And to run this little shell cell, I do Shift Enter, and it runs it. You know, I could also say assign that to a variable. And then if I call A later on, Python remembers what that variable was. I could also write little functions here. So I could you create a function in Python by doing def. And then I'm going to call this add 2 numbers. And it takes 2 arguments, A and B. And then you do a colon. And Python uses white space. So I need to indent after that. So I could just say return A + B. And I can run. So I just did Shift Enter to run that cell. So now I have that function available to me. So if I did add 2 numbers, 3 and 4, it returns 7. So I've already made a bunch of junk cells you could see here. These aren't helping me solve the problem of the day at all. So I'm going to hover over it. I'm going to click the little trash can to get rid of some of these. I don't want them gumming up my environment. Okay. You could do some really cool stuff with this Jupyter Notebooks too. So these are made not only to do code, but sort of to write almost like a PowerPoint with code. So instead of code, I can make this as Markdown, and now I have a fancy text editor. I can do hash. I can say advent of code 2023 day 1. And then I'll just say, this is where I am solving the first day's problem. And then when I shift enter, I get this nice little introductory cell. So if you're writing documentation, you can have it right next to your code. And I can even do a little table of contents on the left panel here, and I can navigate around my code. It's pretty neat. All right, so let's actually get solving this problem. So this is a lot of data. The test is a small amount. So again, what I usually try to do is I try to solve the sample problem first. So actually, I can just copy paste this whole thing, so I don't have to keep bouncing around. I'm going to make another markdown cell. I'm just going to paste that text. That didn't format very nicely, did it? Maybe if I put an extra return in there, or I'll make these a list. Oh my heavens, that still does not look very nice. For example, usually this works very nicely with making lists. I wonder why I'm having so much trouble here. Well, I won't worry about it too hard. Demonstration is not going quite how I had planned, but there's a kind of problem you will run into sometimes with this. All right. Well, anyways, the calibration values of these 4 lines are 12, 18. So I'm going to want to create a variable to hold my test input. So let's do test input is equal to, there's going to be a multi-line string. I'm going to do triple quotes. I want to make sure this looks. No, I'll just copy it right back from here again. That'll make more sense. There we go. That looks correct. And then I could always just type in test input. Let's do print, just to make sure that looks correct. All right, so I want a function that is going to read every line. Or you know what, let's, there's a lot to say. So I'm gonna maybe write the shell of a function. So I'm gonna say def solve day 1. And it will take input. And then I'm just gonna make notes in here. You can make a comment in Python using a hash. So first I need to, let's say for every line in input, turn a number consisting of first and last numbers. Take all of those numbers and sum them. Return the sum. Okay, so we try to break this problem up a little bit. Here's how I do that. First one, for every line in the input, return a number consisting of the first and last numbers. Okay, so this is usually where you'll do a lot of Googling. And I know some of this already, but to try to demonstrate the process here, let's say I know I have this string, and I want to turn it into a list. And there must be some smart way to take a string and split it based on carriage returns. So if I Google that quickly, split string into list from returns Python. Oh yeah, that comes right up. The split method is the most common way to split a string into a list. So I usually try to go to Stack Overflow. So it looks like you just do split and you provide whatever the splitting item is. So here I might do, let's see, list of strings is equal to input dot split. And I'm going to need to put a return in there. So you have to triple quote if you're going to do a return. And then let's just return that list. Or you know what? I don't even really need this in a function. Well, no, let's keep it in a function. Return list of strings. All right, and now let's try solve day 1. Test input. Did not split it up. It actually have that little carriage return there. So that's pretty useful. Let's put that there. There we go. Now you can see I've got a list with all my separate items. All right. So I've got that list of strings. Now I need to get a number. I need to sort of transform this list, and I need to pull those numbers. So let's see. There is an ugly way to do this. I could say, I could just create a list of my numbers. So I could create a list that holds 0 through 9. And then I could just find the characters that match that and take the first one and the last one. So I'm going to do number characters equal to 0, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. And then let's see. I'm going to create a list to hold my numbers. I'm going to say number list is equal to this. Then I want to loop through all of my strings and try to pull them out. So I can say for characters in list of strings. And then you can actually loop through the string as well. So I could say new string equals this. Say for letter in characters, if letter in number characters, new string plus equal letter. And then I will do number list dot append new string. Let's try returning that number list now and see what we get. That didn't work out. And I see what the problem is already. I input numbers here, not strings of numbers. So I need to put all of these in quotes. Let's try that. There we go. That looks pretty good. Advent of code. What do you have to say? That last one only has a single digit. That is a tricky one. And in that case, they doubled it. So what I could say, so here I have new string equals plus equals letter. Once I have that new string, I can actually do this. New string is equal to new string. I'm going to index it. I'm going to say only the first one plus only the last one. I can index from the end of a list. Now let's see that list that I get. New string 0, string index out of range. I have that indented for letter and characters. I need to pull that out one. There we go. I'm getting closer. Now those are strings, not numbers. So I need to turn them into a number. So I'm going to do new number is equal to integer, new string. Make sure to append the new number there. Now I've got numbers. All right, now I just need to return the sum of that. So Python has a sum function. So I can just do sum of my number list, return that, 142. That gets me the solution there. So that's pretty good. So my code, my little function here, solve day one input, is running correctly on this little bit of test data. So you can see the real data is much longer. I could just copy paste that into my notebook. And actually, I will do that now just for simplicity. So I'm going to make a new cell. I'm going to say real input is equal to triple quote. And then I'm just going to paste that in there. I'm going to shift enter. And then I do believe there is a way to hide that cell. So I don't need to, let's see. There might be a way to collapse that. Insert cell above, move the cell down. Let's see. Collapse selected code. There we go. And now let's see what I get when I solve day 1 on real input. I get a number pretty quickly. Moment of truth. Let's see how that does for me. Type in that number, click submit. That's the right answer. So there is a part 2. And the part 2 will usually expand a little bit on what the first problem was, but I'm not going to solve that here. So what I really want to demonstrate is just sort of how I tackle problems using a Jupyter notebook. So that's all. Thanks for tuning in.